we have some amazing people about to give a presentation, just like we have had for the past 2 hours. And they're getting a little bit of time to set up. And while they set up, I'll do some light introductions. We have Anna Wolf here, and we have George Villanueva. They're the leaders of this presentation, and then we have some graduate students. We've got Nate Carr, Valentina Hardwin, and then we have Rick Poulos, who's also going to be presenting. This program, this program is based out of the communication and journalism program. So they have a full PhD program and currently a master's program. We're currently taking a break on admissions right now, but not this coming year, but the following year we'll be back up and running. But this graduate program is how I learned about A&M. It's how I started coming. I met this really wonderful professor in the graduate program named Trevi, and she invited me to come to both the Media Rise conference and then also the Communicating Diversity conference. And so when I taught at UIW and I was teaching in an ABM, Accelerated Bachelor's and Master's program, I would have my students come to your all's conference, Communicating Diversity. And yeah. I wasn't here. Yeah, no, I'm just saying to everybody, like, well, because a lot of y'all weren't here at that time. I mean, this was 2012. This was back in the day. I had students coming from San Antonio and presenting up here. And so that's why when I learned that we weren't going to have this conference, it was a really big deal for me to have y'all say y'all would come and present. I mean, it's a really big deal for me. And I really appreciate y'all putting a panel together. I appreciate y'all presenting. And that's why I kicked them out, because I'm like, I really want to see what y'all have to show, and I'm really excited about what y'all are doing. So I guess I hand the mic to him. Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, and thank you and congratulations again for being the inaugural Joey Lopez award winner for community building here now by the Media and Gaming Lab. And we're looking forward to the hallway being full of different plaques from people who come through both the Media and Gaming Lab and also the undergraduate and graduate department here in the Department of Communication and Journalism. So again, I'm George Villanueva. I've only been here a year and a half. Well, it's going to be finally 2 years. Associate professor in the Communication and Journalism program. Also the doctoral program coordinator. So I'm really just starting this off as a way to kind of engage a lot of the things that we're doing in the communication doctoral and master's program to really integrate multimedia, multimodal stuff, and really ideas around academic scholarship being produced in various multiple modes of communication, plus engaging different epistemologies when it comes to kind of producing this. So funny enough, and I'm glad so many of the things that were touched on today kind of talk about the idea of integrating kind of multiple modes of communication as a way to get beyond just writing up an academic paper to kind of talk about academic knowledge and so forth. When I finished my PhD in communication at the University of Southern California, I also enrolled in the graduate certificate in visual anthropology because they had a master's in visual anthropology. So while I was doing my PhD dissertation on engaged scholarship and communication for urban planning issues, I also took the anthropology certificate, which basically was a master's in visual anthropology. It was at the cinema school and what they call also the interactive media and arts PhD program. So I also produced an ethnographic film in the Philippines in my dad's hometown on the Ati-Atian Festival, which is basically the Philippines' Carnival or Mardi Gras. So long story short, so when I got here and had the opportunity to kind of work with Joey and so forth as faculty, I was really excited because this is a super interdisciplinary department. And there was a lot of interest in kind of building in interest in modes of presentation when it comes to dissertation. So it's been great because the department here at the graduate level really accepts the idea to kind of not only do different forms of dissertations that integrate writing as well, because can't get away from the dissertation. I mean, you still have to write, but also it's the idea that you can also produce multiple modes of communication through video, through audio, to anything to it's not augmenting the thing, it's just showing the fullest range. Because all communication and all storytelling is multimodal. There's obviously been studies that most of our communication is visual, probably 80% on an everyday level, right? So it's just fair to kind of think about that and integrate it. So it's been great because one of the courses I teach, methods course, is called Multimodal Methods and Creative Research Methods. So this is a way to kind of get graduate students who definitely have interest in doing writing, and at the same time doing other modes of production to kind of reduce knowledge around that. So as a way to kind of do this, I have 2 students who are in that course are going to show some of the work that they've done as part of their kind of research into culture at the same time. Then Anna is going to take over from there and talk about both the courses and the research that she does. Then also Valentina is going to end us with a big feature. Then we're going to open up to Q&A. I'm saying big feature because I like Valentina got stressed, right? But anyway, so whether it be Nate or let's go with Rick first, then Nate.
Sound good?
Yeah. And Nate, by the way, let's celebrate, just kind of defended his dissertation and MA thesis. So all we need to do is finish up courses, right? and then he will be an official master's of communication. So, all right.
I'm back. I don't know if I need this. Do I need this?
Yes.
Yeah.
You like it like this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just to talk a little bit about me again. So I came into this program sort of doing certain things like integrating media with performance. And I'll give you a good example of that. Let's see. So this is a production of Cabaret, actually, at the theater company at Bryan College Station. And this is the proscenium of the theater. You can see that I have built this proscenium, false proscenium. I just want to point it out. And you can see that I'm projecting on it, right? So these are like 4 by 8 foot flats that I built and then we've had hung into the theater. And so I already sort of had this experience, and I'll give you an idea of what this sort of looks like when it comes all together in a fun part. We'll just watch a second, really. Right here, where's a good spot? Sorry. Okay. Ooh. So my point is that then you can see the Kit Kat Club there. But I designed this whole show, and if you don't know the show, it's set in Berlin in the 1929, going into the rise of Nazism in Germany. And I kind of approached it as like making media like today, like if you went to a concert and saw like Taylor Swift, like with, video screens and stuff like that. So it was my little interpretation on Cabaret, and the director was gracious to allow me to do that. But one of the things that I do besides create original content is beg, borrow, and steal. I didn't create all of this animation. Some of it I purchased. You can do things like Envato is a good place to get imagery. You can steal it off of YouTube, stuff like that. So I do some collaging work, and so that leads me, and I do performance work. So that leads me to what I did in George's class, which is I took a piece that I wrote, a performance piece that's longer. It's like 50 minutes. And it is called Mixing Ingredients or How to Make an American by Checking Off Boxes. And it was me sort of thinking about, like, how do I fit in these boxes? So when I applied to college in the 90s, we had, it was a little different than today, what you have on your applications today. And so there's, the white, the black, probably back then, I don't know what it said, but it said Hispanic, so you have these choices. And sometimes you don't know where you fit in all of that, especially if you're mixed up, like my family's very mixed up. And then you also, I also talked about being queer on my application to Yale. So this larger piece is about all of these moments where I was trying to belong and trying to figure out how I fit into systems that were already in play, and sort of troubling that and musing on that. From that larger piece, I took an excerpt and I performed that on the Rudder Theater. And you're going to see a piece of that, and you're going to see a piece of that performance, which became a mantra on our class from boxes, 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 you'll see. But then from that performance, I built out this piece that I'm going to show you. It's 2 minutes. It's called The ABCs of Trying to Belong. And it's really all about the ways I've tried to belong in different spaces in my life. So let's go ahead and watch that. By checking off boxes. Little boxes. Brick boxes. Ethnic boxes. Little fucking boxes. Creativity. I turned to create objects to express myself. Death. I saw being gay as death because of the age pandemic. Being feminine. I was not really fully butch and never fully femme. Fad. I've reclaimed this word to take away its power. Gay. This video is rated G for gay. Homo. Just another missing from my past. Imperfect. I am perfection because I am imperfect. George, often used with karaoke. I got my first karaoke machine on layaway in 1912. It was a great love. No time for me. Madonna. Because when I came down, he lifted me up and included me.
Never, you'll never get in. That's what the head of the film studies program at Yale said to me when I told him I was applying to the USC Film School.
Optimism. I remain hopeful that people will find a way to truly live in harmony. Pills that keep me alive even if my disease scares people. Word that no other person. Resilient, no matter the obstacle, I will survive. Here, where I build for you, unstoppable, I get to go.
Strike the pose, there's nothing to it.
Wonder Woman, Xanadu, just add a sparkle. Sometimes overcompensating to belong is all. Zillions, that's how many times I've been called names, bullied in my life. But I'm still going strong. Okay. So that's the work that came out of, one of the pieces of work that came out of George's multimodal class in the fall. So I will turn it over to Nate. Yeah, I'm gonna go up there. Are you gonna go to a website? Yeah, just go.
Because I uploaded it.
Okay. Alrighty.
How would y'all like to see the beginning, we'll say like 2 to 3 minutes of the defense project that I submitted earlier this week? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great. And this is actually an adaptation of a project that I had submitted as the final project for George's multimodal class that Rick presented that video in. So just a little fun fact for you. But I'm into it, I guess. See if that makes sense.
That might be unlisted.
Possibly. Let me take a second real quick to find out.
Signing into your YouTube account from here and you'll just pop on.
Oh, I can't do that, can't I? That would be smart. Nobody peek at my password.
Let me just see. Roll out, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Sorry about that. The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild is my favorite video game of all time, not just because of its innovative gameplay and game design principles that forever altered the video game industry as a whole, but ultimately because it taught me that it was okay to struggle and suffer. I picked up Breath of the Wild for the first time during the summer of 2019 after I graduated from high school. I bought it along with a Nintendo Switch in preparation for a family vacation wherein I was going to be spending a lot of time on an airplane. I did just that. Nearly every second I was on an airplane for that vacation, I was playing Breath of the Wild. Not much after that vacation, though. Fast forward a few months, and I've moved into my first apartment with my high school best friend, and I'm in my first semester of college. I've never been one to understand math easily, and go figure, I'm not only in pre-calculus, but also economics. I have to study 3 hours a day just to be able to scrape by in my classes. In addition, I miss my family, had trouble making friends, and the one friend I did come to college with, well, needless to say, listen to the advice of others and don't live with your best friend. After my long study sessions, I'd find myself feeling defeated. I knew my peers weren't having the same struggles as me, and this was stuff I know a lot of them remember from high school. I didn't, though. I started playing Breath of the Wild again after months of having not played it, and it somehow made me feel validated. I remember growing up playing Zelda games and losing interest because I couldn't solve the puzzles, and there I was working through them and solving them. Granted, I still didn't know how to do matrices on a graphing calculator, but I did know how to use the game's mechanics to solve Breath of the Wild's various dungeons that would have led a 10-year-old me to drop the controller out of frustration. Fast forward even further, and here I am now, still not being the best at math, but with a newfound intrigue in the powers that video games have and the personal narratives of those struggling with various problems. I set out to learn, document, and analyze the personal narratives of various YouTubers, specifically in regard to how different video games help them, like how Breath of the Wild helped me. I wanted to know, what were the circumstances of their life before playing the video game discussed in their video? How did their chosen video game help them cope with major life changes? How did their chosen video game aid in coping with depression? And ultimately, how is placemaking and place belonging affected by virtual journeys and experiences? And
I'm going to end it right there because it is a bit of a long video and there's more content that's going to be added to it later on, but just to give you a nice little taste of what it's going to be like.
Can I clap for you? I really like it.
Thank you. Thank you. Over the results. As George will probably see, because this isn't the final video that I played for him, it's gone through a few edits since then. It originally started as a exploration in how does video games help people cope with really traumatic experiences and major life-changing periods of their life. And in the cases that I found that for the examples that I wanted to explore, it was best to alter it and change the framing from being an exploration in trauma to being an exploration in depression. Mainly because I think for a trauma study, I would want that to be something that I can do face-to-face doing a participant study, but for the sake of time and not having to deal with IRB, I opted to just do it in cases where I could look at publicly available examples. And a lot more people are willing to talk about the depression rather than really, serious trauma. And in cases like that, I also don't want to detract from their experiences. I would rather the framing of their discussion about trauma be about the trauma itself and about what they're comfortable with sharing rather than something that people are more willing to share with, especially now that we're in a world post the pandemic, and a lot of people are now more willing to accept depression and know what it is. And people are like, oh, I've experienced it. There's not as much pushback to it. You're not really encountering the same kind of resistance in terms of talking about having depressive episodes as you are now, because even those who didn't think depression was a thing, I feel like everyone now, at the very least, is more tolerant or accepting of other people's experiences in that regard. And so in terms of getting to talk about it, I chose specifically 3 examples, but the final project I'm going to send off at the end of this is probably going to include 6 to 8. And it's really just talking about people's experiences with video games as they entered really depressive periods of their life. And you'll see in all of the examples, one of them happened right at the beginning of COVID. One of them happened as he was moving into San Francisco with his sister, and he was making very, very little money, and he wasn't really feeling happy creatively speaking. He wasn't really able to exercise that creative muscle he's feeling. And then in another example, it was somebody who was in a similar situation as the second person, where they were in their career, but they were really unhappy with it. So they were deciding to abandon it and go for something else in favor of that, and just the stress and the anxiety that comes with that. So it's a really, just unique exploration of it all. And in terms of the framing that I utilized for that, exploring it, I opted for Jewett's framing in terms of looking at multimodal and social semiotics as the theoretical framework for it all. So seeing how video games can work as socially constructed symbols that take on greater meaning than just them being for enjoyment. They're, so much more to other people. They were so much more to me. That's why I opted to do this as an autoethnographic study. That's what the beginning was for this, was my story of how video games helped me. And I still play video games all the time to this day. I was playing video games this morning, kind of preparing my mind for this coming here. And I will just say video games, they make all sorts of things better. You should play them if you haven't. But I think that does it for my bit that I want to share this. Valentina, I think it's your turn.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Anna Wolf. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Communication and Journalism. I have been here at Texas A&M since 2016. And when I came, Shrivi Ramasubramanian was here and was a close friend and colleague. But honestly, there weren't many other people who were even open to creative analytic approaches, multimodal research. And so the fact that this conference is happening, the fact that I get to share meeting spaces and conversations with so many of these folks that are in this room, not least of all Joey and George, who I expect we will be forever on lots of committees together, because what becomes possible is we teach these classes that could have been one-off experiences for students. But when we have colleagues who are doing this work and creating opportunities for meetups and for collaborative spaces, students are doing this work by cross-fertilizing ideas. And there's this synergistic energy that has really started to come to the forefront in the last couple years that I think is really exciting. And so before I had colleagues doing much of this work, I developed a class on narrative and collective organizing. And this is where I was doing a lot of my more multimodal work was with students in this class. One of the options for the assignments was a digital storytelling project. And initially, when I first had this as one of the options, maybe a student or two would do it. The last time that I taught the class, almost every student in the class decided to do some form of digital storytelling project for their final project in this graduate seminar. And so what we did is we worked together to create a digital gallery space to bring all the projects together. And we called this the Recognition Project. And so maybe Donnie, I'm gonna talk with her. And then it's just ambiance, gallery noise, you know. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay. So when you walk into the digital gallery, you can read about the project more generally. And so this was the framing that we had for the overarching project, that the goal was to disrupt processes of stigmatization and dehumanization through narrative encounter. This was inspired by feminist thinking on the politics of assembly by Judith Butler, literal and symbolic acts of standing together. And so the Recognition Project created opportunities for storytelling and story witnessing practices that draw connections between individual lived experiences and broader struggles of marginalized groups. And so as you go through, and there's more detail on here, but as you go through, you can either scroll through by clicking one at a time, or you can navigate it almost like a game or something. And so when you click on any particular project, like Kira's project was a podcast project. And so you can read a description of the project, and then you can also go into the podcast. As you navigate around the room, you can, some of these are websites, for example. This is Kelly Jo Evelyn's project, which was focusing on this critique of academia as a place of indoctrination. And so when you would click on hers, for example, it goes to this entire parody website that she had created on higher education being places of indoctrination, but also these transformational sites for especially people who have been marginalized in other parts of society. And so as you navigate the room, not only can you engage deeply in, not the window, specific instances like over here, Folu Seton's project, which was a podcast on African immigrant experiences in the United States. And you can jump over to Annie Ortiz's project, which was using painting as a way of exploring decoloniality for Mexican Americans. And so it's not just that you could go deep into one of these projects, but it was actually the juxtaposition of the projects in one virtual space that allowed for people to sort of build connections across things that seem very different and to look for what were the connections between these disparate stories. And so this project, this class has sparked a lot of other projects, including, I'm going to go ahead and mute that now, including one of my advisees, Andrew Christjoy, who couldn't be here. His dissertation project is a documentary project, and we're going to hear from Valentina. I'm on Valentina's committee, so I don't get to say that I'm her advisor, but at least I've been a part of this journey, who's also doing a documentary dissertation. These are the first 2 documentary dissertations that we're having in our department. Not the first person in our department to do a documentary dissertation, as Joey did, but it's showing that they're sort of paving the way for these multimodal dissertation projects, showing that really we can scale up from these one-off sort of class experiences, build curriculum that supports it, and these opportunities inside and outside of the classroom to allow students the resources to reimagine what scholarship looks like. So to make that more concrete, I'd love to invite Valentina up to talk about her dissertation project.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm nervous. I feel the more I'm in academia, the worse I get at public speaking.
He's the one that was between you.
So,
leave this game.
I do. So, a little bit about me. I don't know. This is not really showing what I'm showing.
Let me see.
I'll probably do a screen share.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. See, you're so weird. Yeah. And my 100 million pounds. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Whoa.
I like to keep tabs.
Where are you trying to go? There's an airplane thing.
Out of here.
Yeah, so, well, yeah, anyways. So I love how this conference is framed and enjoy creating this space to kind of talk about storytelling and like, you know, our academic selves. Back here. And I guess I didn't know how back I should go into kind of telling you how I ended up where I ended up here today, because a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is overcoming imposter syndrome. A lot of the things that I have done or that have prepared me, because I talk about preparedness, that have prepared me to this moment. I am an engaged research scholar, a decolonial engaged research scholar. And a lot of times when I hear people use the word decoloniality and what that looks like, and when I hear people talk about engaged research or community engaged research, a lot of it frustrates me. Because it becomes kind of this metaphor in academia and not a realized practice that you can see. And I'm lucky enough that I have had examples in our department that I see Joey and that I see what other students are doing and learning from Anna's work and now George who's joining and all this stuff. So in that, and my ADHD, I'm going to come back because I need to be sustained or I'm going to lose you all. Where's my phone? I like to time myself in like ideas so that I know I'm not, if I'm going to be on 20 seconds in one thing, it means that I got to move on. So, yeah, so imposter syndrome, going back to that, yeah, a lot of things that I've accomplished, for me, it was always like, well, you know, this is luck that I'm here, or it's, you know, it was good timing, but it is not. I've been preparing for this for over 10 years. And it all started with communism. Communism in Colombia in the 50s, actually Fidel Castro in Cuba. And I swear this will make sense. So a little bit about me. I am Colombian. I am from Barranquilla, Colombia. It's a beautiful city. And we have Carnival, which is one of our most famous things that I just wanted to show you a little bit. This is what I show my students sometimes. You know, it's a clear masterpiece of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity. And it's the second biggest carnival in the world. We have a lot of fun. And we have really cool humans born in Colombia. So Who do you see there? Can you identify who these people are? Shakira, Sofia Vergara, that's me.
Like she just throws herself.
And do you know who this guy is? On the bottom, George, do you know who that is? No. And this is gonna make sense. This guy, Orlando Falsborda, is also from Barranquilla. And so this is where I take pride on my academic heritage and how I can know today that I have a very specific line of heritage that is very much tied to the history of my country and that has prepared me to do the type of research that I do today. So Falsborda is one of the founders of participatory communication research. So back in the communism era, in the 50s, the 60s, Colombian economic landscape was a lot of small farming and agriculture. And when Fidel Castro came into power, U.S. Interventionism and U.S. external policy, they were freaking out. The Monroe Doctrine and all these things, they were just figuring out how do we go to places that are at risk of becoming communist countries and intervene so that doesn't happen. And in Colombia, that happened through agrarian reform to bring scientific progress to the small farmers. And that just meant that they came in, they didn't ask the small farmer what they needed and brought a shit ton of scientific advancement that rather than helping the small farmers just affected them largely and took them out of business and created all sorts of social issues. So Orlando Falsborda was one of those folks who researcher, communication researcher, so he was a sociologist, not communication. I'm not gonna claim him on us, but he was one of those folks that no, we need to go to the people, we need to work with communities, we need to work, it needs to be grassroots, and we need to figure out how to come up with solutions that are being born out of the community. And so I was really lucky in 2010, I met Dr. Luis Ricardo Navarro. Dr. Luis Ricardo Navarro works with communities in the north coast of Colombia, indigenous communities, Palenquero communities. You can see here it's all very media-based. He was trained, and if you see all the way to the left, that's Clemencia Rodriguez. She was one of the first people, she's also Colombian, descendant of that line of work of Falsborda. She, in the 90s, was doing all this work on citizens media, alternative media. I mean, Anna, you probably heard about her. She was in the same kind of generation of Alfonso Gumucho Dagron. And so she is her advisor, Luis Ricardo. So Luis Ricardo, who trained me when I was doing my undergrad and who I was working on these projects and who I still collaborate with today, fast forward many years later. These are the people who were preparing me and who I was learning from, that I didn't recognize that until I sat down more than 10 years later and had to go through a whole PhD program to say, I prepared for this moment. This is nothing is by luck. This is a lot of things. So fast forward till today, I was able to situate myself and learn all these really cool things. And now I work with a community here in Texas. We're going through litigation and a bunch of legal stuff, and that's why I'm extra paranoid, and why I was don't say where it was, but whatever, you already know where it was. And I'll show you a little bit about that, what that looks like. So, transition. Now that you know a little bit of where I come from, and I just want to make a case for that, is because engaged research looks different for everyone. And I'm not going to say that you have to do it my way. But for me, it was important that I wasn't going to be extractive and that I did things properly. So when I came, I work with on heirs property. So heirs property is land that has been passed down without any will or estate planning, which puts your land at risk. And a lot of organizations take advantage of heirs property, and there's a lot of legal loopholes to steal that land through tax foreclosures or partition sales. And it's the largest way that people get their land stolen in the US, especially Latinos and Black folk. If you have ever worked with the colonias, one of the main forms of ownership in the colonias in the Rio Grande Valley is heirs property, tenancy in common. And so they're also in a very vulnerable position of being of ways in which their land can be stolen, and access to resources and USDA funds and all sorts of things that you can't get because it's heirs property. So the particular family that I work with, I met 3 years ago. I met them, so I was a research assistant for the Texas Freedom Colonies Project. And they work with a lot of Black settlements, informal Black settlements in Texas. And through that, I ended up getting involved with land-related issues. I became their land retention specialist, and I met this family. So I've been collecting data for 3 years. I didn't know I was collecting data. What I was doing is writing copious notes and advocating with them, learning everything that I could, using every cent, every grant, every money, anything, any conference money that I would get from my department, any resource that I would get, I would use to learn more about heirs property and to do whatever I could so that I had answers for the family. So that was the networking that I've been doing for all this time, and that allowed me to like just keep searching and doing a lot of advocacy work, to the point where today I have a built database and a community of practice with all sorts of people that are involved in heirs property, land issues, environmental justice issues, not only in Texas, but in the country, and who I can pull from with when people reach out and I know where to connect them. Because what we found is that Texas is a desert. It's a resource desert for land, property, heirs property resources. And so I also got certified to train at the community level on heirs property issues, and I can come. So if you know any community that has any issues with heirs property, I am certified through a trainer workshop that I can come, I can do a workshop, and I can help them figure out at what stage they are and until what point they can take matters on their own before they go to a lawyer. Because if they do, there's a lot of things that communities can do on their own that if they go to a lawyer before they have all those things, the lawyer has to charge them for all those things. And it's a lot, because it's a lot of work to get to the right point. Anyway, as long as I'm telling you all this, because for me, heading into this dissertation, heading into this documentary wasn't just, I'm going to come into with it, I'm going to go to this documentary and I'm just going to visibilize this issue, give them some multimedia product that is going to raise their voices. And that's valid if that's what some people do. But for me, it was more than that. It was like, what am I going to do and how am I going to prepare myself so that I have more to offer to this family than just that. So this documentary that we're making is more than just a visual product to raise a voice and visibilize an issue. It's actually also being used right now at the community level to build, to see what other families in that community are having the same issues, because we're trying to build a class action lawsuit and to start litigation. And then in what's coming next, we are this, and that's when you think like, who's your audience, right? If you're creating a multimodal product, like who's your audience for this product? So this documentary has a very specific audience. So the one level is like communities that in the area that can see themselves represented. But second, once we have a judge appointed on that case, this is against big oil and big gas. So once we have a judge appointed, and this case and the battle is about to begin, there's a strategic communication plan along, not just by myself, like this is a collaboration thing. So like with lawyers, with the people involved on putting this documentary out, what's the best form of distribution, and creating a press release that we're going to send to every single media outlet to make sure that the corruption that has been happening with these cases on the ground is not repeated. Because what has happened is that the people that do go against these companies, they keep getting bad results and just not getting the attention that they need to get. So with that said, I'm going to show you a little bit of what that looks like. So I should probably start with the source. So my ADHD is a little whack. So I'm going to show you what that documentary looks like right now. I don't know what I did. I think I just closed the whole thing. So to give you a little context, I'm going to pull this back to this side because I can't really see this. So, crap. Can't see anything. How do I take this and move it? I want to get out of here.
Will you need to minimize it?
Control H
Control H? What's that Control H?
would hide it. But I don't know if it should only hide the top thing you got selected.
So this family, all right, I'm just gonna.
Or you're not mirroring your screen.
Going to do another tab.
Yeah.
Okay. Does it show it on your screen? It's not.
No, because it's in presenter mode or something.
Just get out of the presenter mode.
I don't know. So this family has owned this farm over 100 years, and it's been passed by generation through heirs property, meaning that they didn't have any will written down at any point. And because of that, when it's heirs property and it's black owned land, companies feel that they can take advantage. And what happened with them is that in 1954, they have an unsigned easement for an oil pipeline to be placed in the land. Easement has to be signed. When we look at the easement, there's no signature in the easement. And then you fast forward to 2016, a gas company came in and put extra rods in the land through the same 1954 easement, paying 50 cents per rod, like it was 1954, didn't communicate to the family. And then on top of that, you also have Houston County Electrical Company putting transformers within property lines and coming in and out whenever they want. They put in even their own fence and never communicated to the family. And you're going to see, so that just to give you a little bit of what that looks like, I'm going to show you some footage. So I'm going to show you some aerial drone footage so you get an idea of what that looks like. Oh, I'm so sorry. So this is.
Okay, yeah.
So this is some of the drone footage you can see. You can see over here, so this is the oil pipeline in the middle, in the front of the land. Usually when there's an easement for an oil pipeline, there's a negotiation and a due process. And especially if it's a working agricultural farm, if there's going to be any type of easement, it shouldn't be affecting the economic development of the property. So usually the owners will negotiate to have that pipeline or the rods placed in a place that doesn't really become inconvenient. And the woman, so in 1954, Rosie, who owned the farm, who was a black landowner woman, she saved receipts. We have receipts from dating back to the 1870s. Wow. She saved receipts, poll taxes. We built a whole walking archive with every single document, poll taxes, receipts from everything that she bought at the grocery store, the cotton receipts from the cotton that she was farming.
The lumber to build the house.
Yeah, the lumber receipts. She saved everything. So it is kind of far-fetched to think that the most important document of that you would have to have of an signed easement to put this type of monstrosity in the forefront of your land would not have been preserved in her archive, neither physically or orally. When we have an entire history that has been preserved through the archive and the oral history, and there's no legal documentation of that easement. And when we went to look for the easement in the county court, it's a transcription of the original document, nobody nobody shows us the original document. It's like it doesn't exist or they don't want to show it because the common practice back in the days that if it was written or handwritten or whatever, and it was deteriorated, they would have to transcribe it. And then that's how you would end up with an unsigned easement. But where is that original document? For some reason, they don't want to produce it. And because this is common practice with heirs property, we know that it's been done intentionally. We know that it's companies trying to take advantage of heirs property farms. And it's a way to start stealing land. So land does not look, you don't just steal land by taking the farm, you can start to steal land by landlocking, by bringing in easements and pipelines and all these sorts of things that start to affect the generational wealth that these farms can produce. And so another way that we found was important to work in this land or come to do this work in the land and this ethnographic research was to understand the not again. There you go. It was to understand that data was not just what we consider that traditional. That was not just, oh yeah, we have these stories and we have these narratives and we have these physical things that we can see, but also understand from an Africana perspective that there are sacred and ancestral energies at play that while traditionally not considered data, we were going to honor them. So doing things like coming into the space and leaving a fruit or leaving a coin or something that so that you can honor the land and give something to the ancestors and making sure that you pay your respects. And then I met Victor, who you will see here, who is from the same town as the family. And
Yeah, 3 minutes.
And I made sure to work with Victor so that we could do the proper libations to the land before we did anything else. So you'll see here. And I know a lot of folks here are from San Antonio, so just so if you do work with any communities in San Antonio or the Rio Grande Valley, Genevieve Fajardo she runs the legal clinic at St. Mary's University. It's the legal clinic for will and estate planning. So if y'all need to connect and do workshops on will and estate planning or anything land related, I can set that up. And
yeah, something about is the internet connection. Just go back.
And maybe the amount of windows you have open.
Go back and try it.
I'm gonna toss that out there as a possibility.
Go back and
Probably shouldn't have that many windows open, you know, when you're presenting. Let's try it again. There we go. Yeah. It's probably your memory.
This worked.
Maybe we should open up for Q&A.
Yeah, let's take two. Let's give it a round of applause.
I know we have like 5 minutes.
Yeah. Go ahead. So are there any questions?
Yeah, what was this family's reaction when you just came up to them through your research and said, I want to work with you on this? I mean, that's pretty far off their thought of someone like you just popping in and saying,
I didn't reach out to them. Antoinette reached out to the organization that I was RAing for back then, like 3 years ago. And that's how we started. My first contact with them was, so I'm a liaison between Texas Freedom Colony descendants and land resources. I built, and I can share the link, I curated and built the Black Land Resources website. And so my job was trying to help her find a lawyer. And it took us 2 years to find a lawyer that would take her case. And then that's how I ended up making this my dissertation topic, because it was so hard to find a lawyer with the cultural competencies and that would even know how to handle an heirs property case, which is like still pretty novel in legal education, that it was wild to me that nobody could do it. And that's how I ended up there. And so now I kind of became like a scholar, activist / friend with Antoinette, and like we developed and we're like, okay, now let's get money for do this. And like, so whatever opportunity. So how I frame my dissertation is that I'm doing my dissertation as an excuse to put it at service for this family, and see like, okay, what can we get for you through this, using my dissertation as an excuse.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Dan.
Make a comment real quick. Amazing presentation from everybody. Thank you so much. But Nathaniel in particular, first of all, great name.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. My name as well. I just want to say I'm amazed by your work. It's so exciting to me on a personal level, because a little over a year ago I had a major depressive episode and was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And you know, growing up, I was a Counter-Strike kid, which is a multiplayer competitive shooter game that's really heavy on the strategy and the team aspect. But after this depressive episode, I had extreme anxiety, and I would have panic attacks when I go to the bar and stuff. And so, but I started playing Counter-Strike again, and I decided I was going to do the online play aspect of it. I kind of built up to that. And I really felt like my experience being in a team environment in the game prior to like building my confidence of like just talking to people again was like the ticket. It was like the key to unlocking it. And that was huge. That was so huge. So like I'm all with you on that's, I think it's fascinating that you're doing my research. That you think of those conclusions.
I strongly and firmly believe I would not be here if it wasn't for video games. Absolutely. Especially with the struggles that I and so many other people went through during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the community that people felt playing online games like Animal Crossing, Among Us, like all those things. Like that was the interactions that everybody needed when it wasn't really possible to get that. And I wholeheartedly agree with you there. I know I can attribute pretty much my entire, like just me being here and a lot of my academic identity, I attribute to games like Zelda, Animal Crossing, things like that, because they gave me like the confidence and the ability and the assurance in myself and my capabilities whenever it didn't really feel like I could get that from anywhere else. So thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it.